more people out, engaged in municipal politics, because as you mentioned, you can't really complain about something unless you vote on municipal level, because it impacts our water, our wastewater, our roads, our transit. A lot of things that we see on a daily basis is a municipal issue. Yes, it may be a provincial issue, but municipal government can impact you the quickest if you've got an issue. So when it comes to Belleville, just around the clock, voting done online, over the phone. If you had a question, you could go to the Voting Assistance Center. So massive thanks to the staff who've been facilitating that, because advanced voting started October 11th. So it was Quinte Sports and Wellness Center, Thurlow Community Center. They've been open up until 8 o'clock last night. No paper ballots in the city of Belleville. That was something Neil Ellis mentioned after our chat with the media at the Empire Theatre debate, questioning whether if there was a paper ballot option, would more people, maybe of an older generation who are familiar with paper balloting, maybe not so much online, maybe they would be more inclined to vote. Something to talk about. Quinte West, as we mentioned a little while ago, it made the headlines. They didn't get their application done in time for the phone voting, so it's just online in Quinte West this year. Over to Prince Edward County, they're the ones that have all the chips on the table, depending on how you want to vote.
That's right.
As we mentioned, online, phone, paper ballots at select locations. They've done a fantastic job with their messaging too. They had all sorts of municipal staff, even well into the summer. August, I saw them at a local craft show in Picton, just promoting the fact that you did have 3 ways to vote. But walk us through what happened in Prince Edward County as a resident, Richard.
Well, yeah, that's right. As a resident of Prince Edward County, strangely enough, I did wait till today to vote, and I went online and tried all morning. I couldn't bring up the site for voting. I got all kinds of other material, but I couldn't get into the voting site, so I phoned the City Hall in Picton town, and they sent me a link, and of course it worked, and everything is fine, and I got my vote in. But they did tell me that there were some people having problems with the system. So hopefully it's minor, and hopefully it's very, very few. But when you're dealing with electronics, there's always a chance of a hiccup, you know.
Yeah, well, the City of Quinte West, their website is quintewestvotes.ca, and they had a tweet yesterday just saying that some people had some issues as well. I know in Belleville, when it comes to our voter information cards, each person that was registered had their own individual PIN, and it would only work if you had that special PIN to go in and vote online. City Clerk Matt McDonald mentioned just when advanced voting had started at that Tuesday Belleville City Council meeting that he had heard of people maybe receiving multiple voter information cards with different pins. However, one pin only works, so he kept stressing only one pin would work, even if you had 2 cards with your name on it. Another thing, too, people were saying in the city of Belleville that unfortunately they got voter information cards for family members who have passed away, and the question was, how does the City of Belleville keep up with that? There has been a discussion with Matt McDonald at Belleville City Council. We heard that moving to the next municipal election, they might work off Election Ontario's list, which hopefully will be more up to date, especially with residents passing away in between election seasons. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah. But I think the bottom line of all of this is that at the end of the day, we'll see if the voter turnout drops. If it drops significantly, that would be a factor. But the other side of it is, I mean, I've heard any number of people say that voting online, voting by telephone is dead easy. It's very clear, and I can say myself, having voted online today, it's extremely easy once you get through. But there's little doubt that in the first time you do new things, sometimes there's a resistance, but that is the way of the future.
Yeah, Sterling has telephone, online voting as well. Last 4 elections, Sterling has only been vote by mail. They've listed on their website. And Brighton is just internet voting. So a couple things to keep in mind going forward. As I understand, we have some numbers from the City of Belleville coming in, which is fabulous. As we mentioned, massive thanks to everyone working the voter information centers, the staff with City Hall, for making sure everyone has the correct information as clearly and concisely as they possibly can. So the Belleville mayor race, as we've mentioned, 2 mayors, former mayors in the race. Neil Ellis, the former mayor and our former MP here in the Bay of Quinte, is taking the lead over incumbent Mitch Panchuk. Kyle Thompson, who owns a downtown business just down the road from our downtown studio, is in 3rd.
That's interesting, that number. I was just looking back at 2018. The total votes cast at that time was the winner of Mitch Panchuk in 2018 received 5,238 votes. 9,000 for Neil Ellis. The total of all candidates in 2018 was 14,000 votes cast. And now you've got 14,000, almost 15,000 already. So the question would be, I mean, you used to be able to know how many polls have reported, but now it's not clear if that's a total figure or a final figure or just what.
Now, the one thing to keep in mind, though, there was stark differences being in the audience and being a member of the media, sitting at the Empire Theatre just down the street from us, watching that Belleville Chamber of Commerce mayoral debate with all three of them just a couple weeks ago. Neil Ellis was very poignant and direct, mentioning that Mitch Panchuk did have an Integrity Commissioner report in 2019 with how hiring was allegedly handled. And Neil Ellis basically wanted to say, look, we've got to look at our finances. He claims that Mitch Panchuk has spent a lot of money on senior management. Neil Ellis wants to hold that back. Neil quite direct with things like doctor recruitment. Now, when he was the Belleville mayor for 2 terms, at that time, remember, he did have that doctor recruitment program in plan for the city of Belleville, and he says, the pedal's off the gas. That was one of his quotes directly from that Empire Theatre chat. So Neil Ellis, in my conversation with him, certainly looking for leadership, infrastructure. He believes that's been stagnant over the last 4 years, so we'll see what happens.
Yes. And I think, as you say, you mentioned Neil Ellis's position. I think we all, I think we all would agree that over the last 4 years with Mayor Panchuk, there've been a lot of things happening in the city, a lot of progress and programs. So both gentlemen are absolutely competent and very dynamic and highly experienced. So we can't, the people of the city of Belleville won't lose no matter which way it goes.
No, they're both businessmen. They've both been in politics. Neil has a relationship on a federal level. Mitch Panchuk was telling me in our interview that, look, he texts his Premier Ford. They've got a really good relationship. And building those strong relationships, whether that be from neighboring municipalities or from a provincial or federal level, is essential when you look at the big ticket items that have gotten done in the last 4 years. And when Neil wanting to move on things like doctor recruitment, you think, okay, well, he's got a lot of experience too, right? So it's very tight. Certainly when we heard both these candidates were racing at the same time, many people are going, this is really tight race, really tight race. And we're going to go to Ward 1 results, Richard, for the city of Belleville. If we're going to shuffle our papers here. So how many people, or how many seats rather, for Ward 1, Richard? Could you walk us through kind of the makeup of the city of Belleville there?
Well, yes, I can, as soon as I can find my papers here.
The great shuffle starts.
Yeah, well,
So 6 seats for Belleville Ward 1. Tyler Alsop is currently in the lead, seeking re-election, a businessman that co-owns Doug's Bicycles down the road. We have Garnet Thompson, a longtime councillor, Chris Millette, a former reporter and editor with the Belleville Intelligencer, incumbent as well. Sean Kelly, a radio broadcaster and incumbent. And Lisa Ann Chatton, who up until this moment has previously served as the school board trustee for Hastings Prince Edward District School Board. One new face so far in the lead is Barbara Enright Miller, who I thought did a fantastic job public speaking at the Empire Theatre. Not an easy thing to do, and Barbara certainly made it look very easy with a full house at the Empire Theatre. Barbara had said, if you're new to her platform, she wants to keep momentum going with past council, really wants to focus on healthcare, doctor recruitment, maintaining the tax base, heritage and arts as a destination to help Belleville. So that is a new name for us to get used to there. So there is your top 6 so far.
Indeed, and we see below the top 6 too of the sitting councillors. So mind you, again, it would be good if we knew what percentage of all the votes are included in this, but it would appear from those numbers that they're almost complete. Again, I'm looking back at 2018 to see the relationship, and the number 1 candidate in 2018, of course, was Ryan Williams, who's gone on to Ottawa, and he had just over 6,000 votes.
Yeah.
So these numbers here would appear to be almost equivalent to the totals from 2018.
Yeah, no, Ann Workover, our fabulous producer in the booth with us, getting all these numbers sorted, just says it's 39% of the vote for Ward 1 right now has been tallied in.
I see. But it is interesting that those numbers are substantially higher at this point than in 2018, which would mean maybe voter turnout is higher, which would be very, very, very positive.
Yeah, interesting you brought that up, Richard, because back to that October 11th council meeting, City Clerk Mac McDonald had mentioned that 1,200 people had already voted already. That was about 2 days into advance voting. And he said that he wouldn't have achieved that high number in the same time frame under the old in-person ballot system. So certainly it seems like the momentum was there, especially for advance voting earlier on. Of course, we don't know the specifics on that, but that was just a comment from Matt during the City of Belleville Council. So we're going to go to Ward 2 now. I think things are coming in fast and furious, Richard, as we predicted.
Well, in Ward 2, we see, of course, Paul Carr, the sitting member. I'm getting back to provincial and political politics, aren't I? The sitting councillor with the lead at 2,781 votes, and Catherine Ann Brown, a new candidate, if you will, but certainly well known in the city and well respected at 1727, quite a 1,000 votes less, and Bill Sanderson and Michael Clark below that. But of course, Bill Sanderson is not too far below Catherine Ann Brown, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, Catherine Brown has formerly been involved with the Belleville DBIA. She's a businesswoman as well here in downtown Belleville, the owner of Kate's Kitchen. Extensive financial experience. I believe she worked for BMO back in the day. No, Catherine Brown has been very active in our community. She's on a number of committees and volunteer organizations. Well, shall we take a look around?
Yeah, well, we can look at Sterling.
Yeah,
We mustn't. In Sterling, of course, you have two candidates for mayor, Bob McMullen and Bill Figueres. Excuse me, I got my dry throat. Two incumbents two candidates for mayor. Of course, Bob Mullen is the incumbent and has served up until now. In Ward 1, there are five candidates for the two seats. And in Ward 2, there are 3 candidates for those 2 seats. So, as I say, there's a smaller number there, but be very interesting to see how that comes out.
As for Brighton, we mentioned internet voting only. We're just going to talk about the people running for mayor right now. Brian Ostrander, the incumbent, he's been in power since up until this point. He mentioned in an interview that one of his things that he's hearing at the door primarily when he was out and about was health care. Now, healthcare is a huge thing in Brighton because many people retire to Brighton, and there's an older population there already. Brian Ostrander feels that the next term is going to be busy regardless of where they're at. He says he needs to get a lot of work done. The past 4 years, they've set some plans out similar to the City of Belleville. It's a matter of executing things. So Brian Ostrander goes on to say they need a new fire paramedic base, more doctors, enhanced traffic enforcement initiative, budget for railroad construction, new trails. He's got a 6-point plan for Brighton's future, so something to keep in mind there as we see what could be happening next. Now, Doug LeBlanc, he says that a lot of new people coming to Brighton don't have any doctors, a story we hear about time and time again. He says in order to succeed in the municipality of Brighton, they need more doctors coming, need to focus on affordable housing, tourism, and infrastructure. And he goes on to say that he's got a record as a councillor. He knows how to improve the life for residents. You can see his track record on council, and he wants to bring stuff forward cohesively, work together, and get these big ticket items done. But both these two candidates, regardless of how they might differ within the details of their platform, the big thing in Brighton is healthcare.
Well, as you mentioned, healthcare, of course, just coming through 2.5 years of pandemic, it's not surprising that healthcare and health facilities are on everybody's mind. I think in all of our municipalities, and healthcare is the top of the list. As I say, both all the problems we faced through the pandemic and the shortages of staff at the hospitals, the long waiting list, etc. So healthcare is fair, and of course, health is technically a provincial matter under the British North America Act, but of course the cities have to push hard on it to get the benefits, and along with healthcare, I think across all of our communities is homes, homelessness. Affordability of homes. These are issues that we saw in the provincial election at the top of the list, and they continue, of course. So these two are the very, very largest issues, across all of our communities.
Yeah, now when we typically do federal provincial elections, Richard, we've had the great pleasure of doing those together. We usually focus on kind of the key topics or the key issues, and we'll go kind of based on who's where. This is a real mixed bag. It is a lot about personalities and name recognition to a certain extent. What we can see people cohesively agreeing on across the board, regardless of where they are, is more money is needed for healthcare, more money is needed for affordable housing, more money is needed to address the homeless issue and social services and bring that up to speed. And if anything, the last 4 years of the pandemic has really showed us the effectiveness of municipalities working together cohesively, the effectiveness of councils talking and collaborating, the effectiveness of people talking to Hastings, Prince Edward Public Health, Quinte Health, and working through these big problems as we rolled through the pandemic and whatever else could happen next.
Yes, and I think now, of course, on top of it all, we have recession, and of course, everyone's concerned about food prices, fuel prices, you know, heating our homes prices. There are many problems, many issues that are, you know, in the last couple of years have really become more intense and become more serious, all at the same time. Health and homes and homelessness and the cost of living, they've all hit us at the same time. So the next councils in all of our communities are going to face some very serious problems.
Yeah, speaking to a couple of those notes, Richard, I was talking to Jim Harrison, the incumbent for the city of Quinte West, the current mayor up until this point. And Jim's a farmer. As we've mentioned, he's been in politics since the 1990s. He's well versed in the region, quite popular on a provincial level as well. And Jim mentioned in our chat, look, a couple weeks ago, liter of diesel fuel was $1.40. And he said that situation at the pumps could not only impact how people heat their homes in a couple months, that could roll over to food and other things. But also with the Quinte West, we're talking about health. Keep in mind that the current council that has been in power up until date bought that building that's going to be the new healthcare hub, hopefully, on North Murray Street in Trenton. So Quinte West hope is, now that they have a building, they could get doctors in. Maybe that is a new incentive to get doctors working in the community, staying in the community. And with that, being community-minded, we're going to go to a very quick break. Richard, we'll be back shortly on YourTV.
We are YourTV. Connect with us. YourTV, truly local.
I don't want to ruin this.
Love you.
See you in the morning.
This will be our final year together.
Having these awful nightmares.
Happy Halloween!
We should play board game. It's my turn.
We are YourTV.
Thanks for joining us inside our YourTV studio in downtown Belleville as Richard Hughes and I are bringing you all the live election results from the municipal election. Once again, polls closed officially at 8 p.m. and Belleville unofficial numbers were almost reporting at 40%. But in terms of the mayoral race in Belleville, Neil Ellis is currently in the lead, a quite healthy lead. And Neil Ellis joins us now. So, sir, thank you so much for taking the time. Neil, if you can hear me, how do you feel about the results so far? We may have to wait, Richard.
Yes, all electronic connections.
Oh, Zoom land. All right, well, as we've reported, Neil Ellis in a very healthy lead to be the mayor of Belleville again with the city of Belleville. Thoughts on that, Richard, especially the gap between 1 and 2, because Mitch is second right now.
Well, I won't say it's surprising because I say both Neil Ellis and Mitch Penchuk are highly qualified, well regarded, very experienced. So I think we had anticipated something rather close, one way or other, but rather close, and the separation is rather greater than we expected, I believe.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many people voted, how many people chose to vote online or by telephone as well. So all good things to keep in mind as we move forward. Well, we'll see if we can have some more numbers come in. Once again, it is 8:31. So by all accounts, the polls officially closed in Prince Edward County. If you are just joining us, Prince Edward County announced some technical difficulties, so they did extend their official polls until 8:30, but we do not have any numbers at this point, but that is something to keep in mind going forward. Massive thanks to everyone that exercised their right to vote. That's the most important thing.
Indeed. Well, from the numbers, the numbers we've seen so far, comparing them to 2018, the last election, the numbers all seem to be up at a time when there was the fear because of not having the paper ballot in Belleville and Quinte West, they might have dropped. So that would be very, very favorable if, as I say, the candidates, the campaigns have excited the voters enough to get out in greater numbers.
Well, and especially the last four years and the pandemic era that's been, we're more comfortable on Zoom. We're more comfortable sharing our thoughts on Facebook and Twitter and social media. And you really did see this with the Belleville candidates running for council and the mayor's seat. More of a push for Facebook ads, things on Instagram, information a little bit easier, accessible, especially more detailed on their website. It wasn't necessarily seeing if you had a paper ballot or a paper pamphlet in your mailbox.
Well, I can tell you, for speaking for those people who have lived most of their lives before internet and online anything, it is quite a change. It's a major change. The feel of a paper ballot, of going in and meeting your neighbors and putting an X and putting it in the box. We've had that for 100 and some years, and so change is always resisted. There were people some years ago who thought those automobiles should be banned and only horses, but if the turnout is greater, then that'll be a very, very important sign. Now,
Richard Hughes, as the president of the Hastings County Historical Society, and you've got a huge historical show here on YourTV Quinte, you are superb at the historical facts. So as we hope to reconnect with Neil Ellis, could you walk us through specifically, especially for newer people in Belleville, because we've had a lot of people move in north of the 401 the last 4 years. What's the status of the history of the Belleville mayoral candidates? What are some of the facts you can throw around? Well,
facts, yes, of course. As I say, when your head is filled with history, it's filled with all kinds of things. Well, Belleville has had 74 mayors. I know that's since it became a town in 1850. And 74 mayors, if I could find my notes here, more than half of those mayors served either 1 year or 2. 30 out of the 74 mayors served only 1 year. Now, of course, we're so used to it's a 4-year term, and it's going to be 4 years. But 22 of those mayors served 2 years. Actually, for 4, out of 70, about 12 have served more than 3 years. So this 4-year term is something quite new. But it's interesting. I took a look at the men versus women, I call it. Men versus women. And of course, in the current one, this isn't historical. In Ward 1 in Belleville, as I say, we've got 14 candidates, 6 women and 8 men, which is getting closer and closer to half and half. In Quinte West, there are 24 candidates, only 6 women, 18 men. And in Prince Edward County, with 29 candidates, 7 women and 22 men. So altogether, I have about 71 candidates, 20 women and 51 men. So it's still, only about about a third or less than a third women. So that's something that we've been working on, and I can see from the Belleville Council situation, there'll be more representation. But no, it's a very interesting. As I say, as far as longevity, the longest serving mayor that Belleville had was George Zagouras. Actually, he served a 12-year term and then a 4-year term. He was mayor for 16 years, and the closest to him is Neil Ellis at 8 years. So George Zagouras, and if you go down to Belleville Market Square, you see that is George Zagouras' territory there. So he was, twice as long as Neil Ellis, and after that, I say the majority were 1 or 2 or 3 years. So.
Now, in the news recently, we saw mention Shirley Langer. What's the story with her in Belleville Council? Well,
women mayors, if you wanted, women mayors. Belleville's had four women mayors. The first one was, of course, Jane Forrester. Jane Forrester Park down near the harbor there. And she served 2 years, and then Robin Jeffries served 2 years in the 70s. Shirley Langer served, she was the first to serve 4 years, 1991 to 1994, and then more recently, Marianne Sills, 2003-2006. So since 2006, we've had a succession of men. And as I say, if you after Marianne Sills, Neil Ellis was there, then Tazo Christopher, then Mitch, and tomorrow we'll have the new mayor.
We'll see officially who it is once we get that all confirmed. Right. Now, going back to Ward 1, you mentioned the Ward 1 situation. If we could pull up those Ward 1 numbers, we just previously heard we had about just under 40% reporting for Ward 1 with Belleville City Council, just to see who's still in the lead there. Numbers were posted on the City of Belleville's website if you want to look with us as well. So in the lead, number 1 so far is Tyler Alsop. Now he pitched the idea that he was asked the Empire Theatre question, what he would do to improve the city, especially the healthcare situation. And Alsop said at the time in that debate there, he wanted more flexible contracts. He wanted nurses and RPNs into the mix when we're talking about recruiting healthcare professionals. He was asked, do you want to be in Belleville or from Belleville? And he said, look, there's a difference, especially with younger people. He's around 30 or so. And he said, growing up in Belleville, everyone would just say, oh, I'm from Belleville. And he wants people to be proud of the fact they're from Belleville, especially with everything that's got done the last 4 terms. His big thing is upgrading amenities, managing growth, and looking at density. So a couple of good things to keep in mind there. As we see, as you mentioned, Richard, maybe online voting is sparking more younger people voting in municipal elections for the first time because it is so accessible. Well,
I see. If you look at the first two, Tyler, of course, Tyler Alsop in the lead, and Garnet Thompson second. Well, there you have youth and energy and drive, and then Garnet with experience and a lot of energy and drive also. But there's the long-term counselor with the corporate memory and the newer member, of course. So you have a wonderful combination there in the first two. And of course, I think in the last 4 years, Chris Millett and Sean Kelly have shown themselves to be very much involved. They're very much involved in the various committee work and the various aspects of city life, and it's reflected in the votes, I believe.
Yeah, now speaking of Garnet Thompson, Richard, Garnet Thompson likes to say that anybody can find him anywhere, and that truly is true. You can find him at the Belleville's Farmers Market talking to people about issues. He's very accessible. Known as Mr. Belleville, as you mentioned, he's got a remarkable memory. He's got all sorts of experience. Chris Millett, I mean, in that Empire Theatre debate that I was at a couple weeks ago, his basically big thing was, look, we've done great, but boy, do we need to fix the water treatment plant, which hasn't been addressed since the 1960s. I feel that hit a lot of home with people in the east end of Belleville, where the water treatment plant is located, because frankly, it can get rather stinky.
That was also Neil Ellis's #1 point, water treatment.
Chris Millett was saying he's proud that Belleville declared a climate emergency. As you mentioned, he's big on green space as a part of the Green Task Force. And yeah, we'll see what happens there. Sean Kelly certainly is the chair of the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, but he was big on health care. There was a situation, I believe, last year or earlier this spring where there was concern that a healthcare hub could be closing down and people would lose access to things, and he was beating the drum on that really quickly, and they helped get the funding to extend that for more
And I
people.
think both of them have brought energy, a lot of energy and a lot of drive there. And the number 5 and number 6 position, both newcomers, both women. And that, again, you need new people. You need new thoughts, fresh ideas, different approaches. So you've got a pretty good mix there of experience, people who are on the last council, and newcomers. So it looks good for the future.
Yeah, Lisa Ann Chatton certainly has community experience. With Crime Stoppers, she's huge on partnerships, as we mentioned, the current school board trustee with Hastings Prince Edward District School Board before this. She was asked, what action do you want to see in homelessness? And she just said everything. And everyone laughed at the time, but, she's got a lot of points. She wants to collaborate on homelessness and mental health. She thinks that's hand in hand. And she wants to retain medical staff and have incentives for first home buyers. So we think about the youth and the younger people coming in. Tyler Alsop, Lisa Ann Chatton, we really see a different tone in how they feel that Belleville should progress and support the younger people.
Yeah, no, it's going to be very interesting because they're walking into a very, very serious situation.
Long laundry list of things to get done.
That's right, that's right. There's so many issues that have to be dealt with, and they're not light issues. They're all very serious issues, and to tell you the truth, I wouldn't want to be taking on that task right about now. I've seen a lot of the councils over the years and a lot of jobs they've done, but I would say the issues they face, some are monumental.
Well, to another place with some issues, monumental issues. We've talked about tourism, infrastructure, housing, affordability. Prince Edward County has all those things, including a debate about short-term accommodation rentals, which was a fiery topic in Prince Edward County the last year or so, especially at council meetings. Steve Ferguson, the incumbent, is in the league right now. We only do have 11 out of 23 polls reporting. If you are just joining us, Prince Edward County officially extended their voting deadline to 8:30 tonight. It should have been 8 o'clock, but there was issues there, as we mentioned, voters and numbers and things. So yeah, Steve Ferguson, he was big this last term in realigning staff and administration, got an agreement going between Loyalist College and Base 31 to keep students learning locally. Financial relief program for local low-income residents. He was big on a destination marketing organization to generate money from visitors and use that as kind of spin-off to strengthen the county's resources and financial incentives, all from the municipal accommodation tax. So Steve Ferguson has had a lot to deal with in the last 4 years.
I was just going to comment on that myself, that he, with the influx of tourists, the pressures on the systems, and the mood in the county among the older residents, all of these things are sometimes at a fever pitch through the summer.
Yeah.
So he's had a very difficult road to hoe between the economic benefits that the visitors bring, the spending, the accommodations and all this, and at the same time dealing with the long-term residents who rather like the calm agrarian feeling of the county.
Yeah, well, the county's got rose-colored glasses, right? To many people, like you read Toronto magazines or the Globe, highly recommended, beautiful hotels, beautiful restaurants, some fantastic chefs and entrepreneurs down there. But then the back end of that is locals have been there for 3 generations, are having a hard time meeting their basic tax bill because everything else is going up because we're getting multi-million-dollar homes. In downtown Wellington, we hear it loud and clear when we're at hockey games. There's going to be some development, some expansion. The question goes, where do we get our water? Where do we get our sewer? Well, electricity sometimes can be sketchy, and internet service, don't get them started on that. So when you talk about, quote unquote, the newer people and the older generations, there's a real divide. And the last couple years, there's some localism. It can get a little nasty, but I feel that Steve Ferguson has done a good job with listening to both sides. At council meetings, he's quite inviting. He lets people take as much time as they need sometimes with their formal depositions. And I think when it comes to the future of the county, you've got a lot of experience running to be the mayor of Prince Edward County.
Well, it's certainly a complex county. You know, with what have we got? 9 wards, 13 councillors. It's a very complex county, and of course, the reason they keep the 9 wards is a very traditional reason. The various traditional communities throughout the county. So it's he has a very difficult job. His business background, extensive business background, probably helps him to keep everything in an orderly fashion, but certainly the mood is very sensitive, and of course, as I say, that balancing act between the benefits that development brings and of course keeping it as the beautiful agrarian county that we all love.
Yeah, I mean, the kettle can boil quick in any location, but I think out of all the locations we're looking at, Prince Edward County is quite dynamic, regardless of whether you're there in the summertime or the wintertime. Also, too, I mean, former councillor Dan O'Brien, who served as the Ameliasburg Ward councillor for 12 years, said politics is in her blood. She made it well known earlier on that she was running up against Steve. She wanted to bridge the gap between locals versus tourists. She felt that her last term on council, she got things started and got the conversations rolling with licensing for short-term accommodation rentals, but just didn't get enough time to really go in depth with those issues. So Dan O'Brien is someone that could give Steve Ferguson a run for his money, as well as Terry Short as well, a former councillor too. So a lot of experience, people putting their name in the hat.
Yes, indeed. No, I say in the last election, she ran about 800 votes behind. That's not a lot. It is about 10%, but still, she carried a great deal of support. So she had something to build on for this term. When, as I say, we'll see if she was able to build that additional 10% and come out on top.
Yeah, as we shuffle our papers here, Richard, I understand we do have results from Sterling Rawdon, which, as we mentioned, was just telephone and online only. Their last 4 elections previously were only vote by mail. So Sterling has gone from old school, so to speak, to back in the modern times. It is Bob Mullins with a healthy lead at this point, more than half the vote. Yes,
there's little doubt there with the almost double the amount for the second candidate, Mr. Ficioris, and so they would appear that Bob McMullen will keep his chair.
Sterling Rawdon, very similar to Prince Edward County, one of those areas that has had lots of big decisions to make, with more people moving north out of Belleville, trying to find some cheaper accommodations, some cheaper housing, and going to places like Sterling or Tynanega or Deseronto just to get a bit of a break, especially if they want a larger home and they want to start a young family. And we'll go to Ward 1 Rawdon councillors so far. A bit of a tighter race for Chair 1 and 2. Jeremy Soames and Dean Graff, 1 and 2 in the lead, followed by David Black, Kirsten Stadal, and Teresa Joanne O'Hare.
Yes, indeed. It's interesting there. I do believe, yes, Jeremy Soames was an incumbent. The others were all new to that. And that's Ward 2, of course, yes, Ward 2 now with Carolyn Smith and Don Stewart sufficiently ahead of John Rock, and John Rock was the incumbent. So there the incumbent is running third at this point in the vote counting. And Carolyn Smith, of course, very well-known, very popular person with a moderately good lead.
Now, what's Carolyn Smith's background? Why is she so well-known? Just a familiar name, like in Sterling?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, in Sterling. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, no, she's certainly well-known, very popular in Sterling, very active for many years there.
The thing is active, though, Richard? A lot of the chairs that are maybe catching us by surprise, or the leads that we didn't necessarily expect at this point, is that name recognition. Yeah. Especially with younger families moving in. Sometimes it is just about who came to your door, or who put a pamphlet on, or who you happen to watch an interview with.
It's a long-standing saying that in municipal politics, name recognition is very, very important. Now, in the Belleville Ward 1, that may not be the case, because we see 3 of the sitting councillors who would be well-known, not in the top 6 at this point in time. So maybe that old saying that name recognition is the key factor, maybe that's not the case.
Well, speaking of name recognition, a couple things to think about outside the Bay of Carnarvon as we wait for more numbers is there's about 10 province-wide mayoral races that have got Twitter by storm. In Hamilton, former NDP leader Andrew Horvath, who we talked about in our last election show, is trying to start a new chapter, was a city councillor in Hamilton for 3 terms, and now she wants to run for the mayor seat. In Vaughan, former Ontario Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca running in Vaughan to become mayor. Brampton, in Patrick Brown trying to keep his spot on as mayor. Ottawa, Jim Watson, a huge name, is not seeking re-election. In Toronto, John Tory, another big name, seeking a 3rd term. So those are kind of the key 4 or 5 province-wide races that are of note, especially when we think about these larger cities and how they might build relationships or expand relationships with the mayors of, let's say, Belleville, Prince Edward County, or Quinte West, who are looking for more support with some big issues like homelessness, affordable housing, water, and sewer.
Yeah. Yes, well, I think that's certainly true. Certainly even within the Quinte region, the mayors have been working, I do believe, much closer, talking more often, because they have the common problems. There's an interesting question that maybe we could use on Jeopardy: is how many elections are there in Ontario today? And the answer is, I believe, 417. There are something like 444 municipalities in our province, and I believe there are 417 elections today. So we can run through them all if you'd like.
We're going to need another cup of coffee maybe if we hit midnight. But first we're going to go to Quinte West, Richard, as the numbers have just come in. So QuinteWestVotes.ca, if you are watching the numbers along with us. So Jim Harrison in a very healthy lead against former councillor Karen Sharp, who up until this point had served as a councillor, and Clodore Delude as well. So Jim Harrison, as we mentioned, name recognition can go a long way in certain respects.
Yes, it's an interesting point, though. I'm not sure, again, what percentage of the total vote is counted there, but in the last election, Jim Harrison received 7,000 votes. And his other candidate received just over 3,000. So I would appear that Karen Sharp has picked up quite a few votes that maybe Jim Harrison would have had in the last election. But nonetheless, he's 1,000 ahead at this point, and that's probably determinant.
Yeah, one of Jim Harrison's famous quotes is, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. Yep. So we'll have to see what happens from there, as we do have a special guest with us, Richard, coming in very quickly as we take a shuffle here.
Okay, you got it. Yeah.
As we've mentioned previously on our show, technology was not on our side, like our friends in Prince Edward County. Neil Ellis is joining us, who's in a healthy lead for the mayor's chair once again in the city of Belleville. So congratulations, sir, so far.
Well, thank you. And it's great to be down at Cogeco. We're close by at the Empire, so it wasn't too far a walk. So
that's good.
So things are well?
Well, you tell us.
Well, great news. Yeah, obviously to come out being a winner is always a positive thing, and a lot of great support, a lot of good team out there this year. We knocked on a lot of doors, and the message got out, and people believed in me, so it's fantastic. I'd like to thank everybody that supported me, and that will support me moving forward.
Now, of that message, Neil, you mentioned cost effectiveness was a big thing that you kept circling back to when you think about your time formally as the mayor of Belleville and could be heading into a next seat. Where do you want to go from here with cost effectiveness? How do you think that resonated with the voters?
I think it did. Definitely we're going into a recession that has been called, and part of my platform was a 0% tax increase for this year. Obviously we won't be able to keep that every year, but I think out of the gate with interest rates and price of groceries and gas and inflation, we need to help out. So it's time to help out. Other things, obviously doctor recruitment and infrastructure were my platforms, and I think, they rang high, and I think that you see most of council that has run and that have got in are running on a similar platform, whether it's housing, doctor recruitment, or infrastructure.
Now, doctor recruitment, Neil, you had said at the time that the pedal is, quote, off the gas. Now, your council initially started the doctor recruitment program, highly esteemed across Ontario and even nationally. How do you get the gas back going again?
Well, I think it's, you got to look to other municipalities, and you don't have to look very far. You look to, whether it's Quinte West or Prince Edward County, they've hired a full-time doctor recruiter. So, basically, other municipalities like the city of Kingston are in the game, and since January of this year, they started their program, and they recruited 9 doctors in 9 months. I give council credit for recruiting a couple a year. but that's all they have budgeted. So it's a matter of budgeting more money, looking at a full-time recruiter, or at least putting some resources, human capital resources towards this, and looking at other programs and seeing, how good they are compared to ours. Ours was one of the first out. It was modeled after my council, and myself brought that to fruition, and it's been copied. So it's time to, even Quinte West are going to build a medical facility to help doctors. So we got to look at things like that.
Never mentioned that. Richard, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, we were talking earlier about some of the largest issues that are facing all the municipalities, not just Belleville, but healthcare, housing, homelessness. These two are top of the list for so many people.
No, and like a lot of municipalities in Eastern Ontario, there's the same issues. And as mayor, we sit on a committee. It's the Eastern Ontario Mayor's Committee, which is all Eastern Ontario mayors. So we have similar issues that we can lobby the federal and provincial governments for. So it's time to put our everybody in a synergy to get things moving forward with both upper governments.
Within the structure of the City of Belleville, should senior management staff be concerned about their jobs now? Because you've been quite...
Never. I think that, we have to look at a job freeze right now on senior management. Having said that, I have to get council support on that. I think it's time to look back and step back as a council as a whole. And I know there's some reorganizations that's happening, and there's some senior positions that are in the queue to hire. And I think that we have to stop and take a look at that. But that will also be a council decision.
And looking at what appears to be your new council, you have some new people. As they appear to be like two new people, and you have at the two top candidates, Tyler Alsop and Garnet Thompson, a younger person, full of energy.
Watch what you say about Garnet now.
And no, Garnet's a dear friend, and with Garnet, long experience and a very, very caring person. So you're going to have some challenges with a fairly young. At least 3 of the 6 are fairly young people.
I'm young at heart, so I don't think there's a problem. So sometimes my wife Sue says I have to grow up, but I look at the council, and as I've got to sit down and first comprehending the win and let that sink in, and to see who's on council. I've been told by many that there has been 3, I believe, in 1 and Thurlow Council that's been replaced. So most of the councillors that are new, I have met during the campaign, and ones that are on, obviously, I know them. So I think that everybody listened to their speeches at the Empire and things like that. They're all in it for the right reasons, and I think that's fantastic.
Well, Neil, congratulations. Thank you so much. We understand you're a popular man right now.
Yeah, I got to get back to the Empire, but thanks
for
everyone.
taking the time.
Yeah, congratulations.
Okay, take care. All the best.
Thank you. And we'll go to a quick break, and we'll be back shortly.
Sorry about that. I got about 100 people down there.
Oh, yeah. Well.
Okay, thanks.
We are YourTV. Connect with us. YourTV. Truly local.
Hi, I'm Constable Aaron Miller with the Prince Edward County OPP. I'm here with Wellington Duke's Jonathan Bala. If you plan on drinking or consuming drugs, plan to not drive. Instead, arrange for a designated driver, taxi, public transit, or come up with another plan.
Highway safety is a team sport. We all need to do our part.
Seniors Support is just that. Full of information about services for seniors, this show focuses on supporting seniors in our community. Watch Senior Support, Tuesdays at 7. YourTV, truly local.
I'm joined by Richard Hughes tonight, and congratulations to Neil Ellis, and thank you so much for his time, who came in and pivoted through a couple of technical glitches as we got our interview with him. So, Richard, how do you feel about that? He seemed pleasantly surprised.
Well, yes. Well, of course, I'm pleasantly surprised to see the winning candidate come and join us on this program, and to hear his views. He's certainly from his interview there. You can see he's ready. He's given this a lot of thought. He's got a lot of things in his mind. So it should make for a very interesting 4 years coming up. He's highly experienced, and as I say, he has a lot of things in front of him that he wants to achieve.
Former MP of the Bay of Quinte as well. So when you think about that experience in building those connections and getting those big ticket items that Belleville has done, like the water treatment plant, you really do need those connections in higher level governments, and Neil's certainly proved that he's got the federal ear too.
Yes, and he has 8 years experience as mayor, so he's it's a very positive outlook for the next 4 years. Now, to be fair, I would say that the last 4 years have been extremely well managed too for the city. A lot of projects achieved. As I say, it's all you always feel bad when as I say, Mayor Penchik has worked very, very hard and put a lot of himself into it and done a very good job. Basically, now we'll have a new administration and again a very energetic person in charge.
Well, just speaking on the streets with folks and seeing the lawn signs, I mean, it was a toss-up, a true toss-up. Many people, I was in Kingston a couple days ago, they were even commenting, who do you think is going to win? I have no idea. Who do you, and we really don't know. But speaking to Mitch Panchak's record, my goodness, lots got done. Lots got done. He had mentioned in our interview that, under COVID initially, mayors were called to work together like never before. When I asked him about one of the big successes the last 4 years, he really felt communication. He was consistently out there on social media, on YourTV with our updates weekly with COVID-19 and things like that, building on the strong economy, being fiscally mindful, making sure things got done and in works, like the new Belleville Fairgrounds site, YMCA coming, Blackberry Ridge redevelopment. That's a $1.9 billion investment. The Bear he's been preaching the last year and a half.
Yes.
The Belleville Eastern Arterial Road, which is basically going to be an interchange of Highway 401 in the provincial budget, which was key. And that's going to unlock the industrial park, keep all the really big transport trucks that can be driving way too fast on Canifton Road off of Canifton Road, hopefully. So a lot of positive growth, and he wanted to build off that. So a fabulous record in the last 4 years. When you think about all that we've been with and the facts that there was no real tax increase, right? Like taxes are a big thing.
That's right. No, if we look back, we can certainly, it's been very positive. Many achievements over the past 4 years. And so, the voters, the thing about the democracy, the voters decide. And I must admit, I thought too that this would be very tight. It would, in fact, I thought, if it's extremely close, how do you do a recount on electronic voting? And nobody seemed to have an answer to that. And I guess we won't have to know.
Yeah.
But no, certainly the last 4 years have been very, very busy and very successful for the city. And now, as I say, with a strong council and a highly experienced mayor taking over, the next 4 years look very good.
It was interesting to see how Belleville builds on the buzz, and if many people outside of Belleville and the Bay of Quinte are taking note of this race, because certainly it was highlighted in Kingston, Gananoque, Brockville, up towards even Muskokas. There was a couple mentions of it too. So I think with the experience, the fact that they're all businessmen, the level of detail and what they've accomplished in their portfolios politically, certainly had many eyes on this race, not just in Belleville and the Bay of Quinte.
Yes, and beyond the very large chair that the mayor sits in, and it's about 2 stories tall, the mayor's chair. If you've never been into the council chambers to see it, it's an impressive one. In fact, they had to build the skylight in the roof in order to fit in the mayor's chair. It was so tall. But sitting out around that white oval, you have a new council and some very interesting new names and some older names. So it's going to be fun watching it as it develops.
Yeah, very fun watching it, that's for sure. If we can go over to Quinte West, if the numbers are in, if we can briefly pivot. Great to have all the fabulous graphics on both sides to keep us track too, Richard.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you to everybody in our studio here. Jim Harrison, the incumbent, is still in the lead. Karen Sharp in second, and Cladora Delude, who's run several times, is 104 votes.
Yes. Yes, that's right. Well, the separation is 1,000 or almost 1,000, which is a very large separation in reality. It would be very difficult to overcome that. As I say, we don't know the percentage of votes cast or counted, but it would appear that Jim Harrison has convinced enough voters that he deserves another term.
Now, just on Jim's list of things, seeking a third term as mayor. Last term, he noted in our interview, we built a new fire hall, the police station, the boat launch, had support from staff, especially the last 30 months with COVID-19. Went on to say that he's a part of the Ontario Police Association Service Board, and a lot of people pointed to the fact that Quinte West has done a fabulous job with their policing in the OPP, making sure people are safe, especially during COVID-19. The big thing, Richard, as we mentioned, is that I don't know if we call it a healthcare hub yet, but a healthcare center. They've just purchased a building on North Murray Street in Trenton. And Jim's big line, especially with his canvassing and his debates at the Heroes Landing and things like that, was, quote, can't do anything without quality infrastructure. He's big on water and wastewater right now. Paving after that, he says an example would be building on the west end by Walmart in Trenton. He says the wastewater line needs to be recompleted. Also notes to Wooler Road. He's talked about that, I feel like, for 2 years now. That needs to go from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. Murray Canal Bridge on Highway 33 needs to be wider, he says. And when it comes to finances in Quinte West, he says really can't commit to whether there'll be no tax increase or a tax increase, but at the end of the day, he felt that they increased and improved their reserves over the last 4 years to cover the debt load that they carry. And he says Quinte West, he feels, not in a position to make a dramatic increase to taxes, but at the end of the day, things are going up. And it's probably going to cost you more to pave a road.
Yes, indeed. And Jim Harrison, personally, he's a very, very pleasant man. And he's understated. He's always very calm. And very, I won't say slow-moving, but he's very, very easygoing, and that belies his nature. He has a good grip on everything, and so he's, as I say, you take him to be a very, very calm, very, very gentle soul, but he is very much in command, and he works very, very hard all the time.
Yes, he was saying to me a couple weeks ago that really the mayor's job is 24/7, and he's been going all hours, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic. But being in politics since 1990, being a part of the amalgamation process, being a councillor before he was mayor, Jim Harrison can pull out statistics about the Bay of Quinte like nobody. That's been proven on a provincial level as well with our MP Todd Smith too. So Jim is a walking encyclopedia, kind of like what Garnet Thompson is in the city of Belleville.
Yes, indeed.
As we go to the Ward 1 councillors for Trenton, it is Zach Card in the lead, so a very similar thing to what's happening in Ward 1 here in Belleville, a younger person back in. Zach Card, 35 years old, Wildcard Brewing Company he's owned with his brother since 2015, wants to bring youth to the table, but he is also the corporate secretary for the Quinte West Chamber of Commerce. His 3 main focuses, and they were quite readily accessible for anybody who wanted to make an educated vote. 3 main focuses were affordability, fostering an environment that promotes good jobs and industry growth, and protecting local health care. He also says he's committed to fiscal responsibility and keeping all forms of property taxes down. And when we look at the age group and the demographic of the last couple of councillors for Quinte West, Richard, nice to see some younger voices finally coming in, like we've seen in Belleville.
Yes. As what's noteworthy was Zach Card leading the polls there. The other 3 who are following him are incumbents, but he's not. He's not an incumbent. So they've taken a fresh fresh look, and he certainly must have impressed people to be able to leap ahead of the incumbents who are well known.
Zach Card's very well spoken. If you had a chance to talk to him at the Trenton Farmers Market, he can tell you all sorts of stories, but it's nice to see some youth at the table too. Mike Kossovos, as we mentioned, restaurant owner, and we'll go from there. Edgerton Boyce is one of 2 seats so far. Edge, a former Belleville City Councillor, so certainly name recognition there. Richard?
Yes, indeed. Well, that, again, when Edgerton Boyce ran Quinte West. Of course, he lives in Sydney. It was a bit, I won't say a surprise, but of course he was a councillor in Belleville for a number of years. So, the question was, can he move to another municipality and do well? And standing at the very top of the list there, it would appear indeed he has done very well indeed. And Shelley Stidall in second place there, just slightly ahead of Terry Cassidy, but she is, again, not an incumbent, she's a newcomer. And so, again, newcomers are doing very well this time.
Yeah, Shelley has extensive experience when it comes to municipal financing. She spent the last 30 years in senior financial management positions at a variety of municipalities, including the city of Quinte West, so she's a staff member formerly. Additionally, she's also worked as a senior municipal financial advisor for the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and we think of affordable housing, that might be a good voice to have around the table. Stidall has also mentioned that she plans to improve transit as well as trails and new bike lanes. She also plans to set achievable goals for ensuring affordability for all residents, while also working to make the city safe, clean, green-friendly neighborhoods. So she has 30 years of experience of watching the books and the audits and the money roll in and the reserves and the funding. So that's an interesting choice.
Yes. Well, when you look at the next two, Terry Cassidy and Dan Kuntz, both, of course, are incumbents. And Terry Cassidy, I know myself, I've worked with him on committees, and he has been active in politics in Trent for a very, very long time. And of course, the three candidates there are within, 60 votes, maybe 70 votes. Those numbers could change if they're not, if they're not complete. As I say, we don't know what percentage of the votes these numbers represent. But the three candidates very, very closely. In fact, certainly the second, third, and fourth are within, say, 60-some votes of each other.
And just a note from our graphics team, there is 4 seats in Ward 2 Sydney Ward. So Terry Cassidy in blue and Don Kuntze, they are in at this moment, unofficially.
I meant to mention that.
Unofficially.
So there you have, as I say, one new. Actually, two new people, and 2 incumbents in Ward 1. In Ward 2, I'm sorry.
So many wards in Quinte West.
Sydney. Ward 2, Sydney. That makes it easier to understand.
Well, let's see if we can go to Ward 3, Murray, if it's possible.
Yes, Murray has 6 candidates for 2 seats. And the 2 leaders are the 2 incumbents, Jim Elliott and David McHugh, and they stand quite strongly above the remaining 4 candidates. So it would appear that Murray Ward will return its 2 councillors.
Both those 2 in council meetings, especially the last 2 years, have been very detailed and direct with their opinions when it comes to healthcare and supporting Trent Memorial Hospital Foundation. So certainly 2 that are very interested in keeping healthcare the way it is, keeping Trenton Hospital open, but also making sure that it can thrive and retain the healthcare staff. As we'll go to Ward 4.
Now, in Ward 4, Greg Covell at a fairly solid lead over Matt Joyce and Linda Reid. Linda Reid was the incumbent, and she's running a distant third at this point. And Greg Covell, he did run in 2018, and he's run again in 2022, and it looks like this time he will succeed.
And just as we're saying it, Richard, we do have a change on this slide, so we will come back to it hopefully when we do an adjustment there. It is just about to come in. We'll see the numbers shift a little bit as we get used to the numbers on QuinteWestVotes.ca. There we go. Linda Reid is in the lead.
Go back to Ward 4.
There we go. 337.
Oh, I see. The numbers are the same. The names have changed.
Yes.
Well, we're only human, aren't we? So Linda Reid, the incumbent, is now leading with a pretty good lead over Matt Joyce and Greg Covell. Yes. So we'll erase the comments earlier and go with these comments.
Well, I think as we're viewing kind of what's coming in Belleville and Quinte West, it seems like in general, people have really done their research, and maybe with these results, it's showing that people want a fresher voice, a younger voice, a different perspective, maybe people with different career backgrounds as well.
Yeah. Well, this is what I'm seeing in a lot of these numbers. What I'm seeing in a lot of these numbers is that I'm getting the impression people were paying attention to the issues and the topics and listening. It's not a question of just rolling over the previous administration, and the numbers are changing considerably. So, I mean, that's encouraging, because so often in municipal politics you get this thought that, you know, the same names repeat and repeat quite often, but a lot of new names and a lot of interesting names.
Well, speaking of names, let's see if we can go over to Prince Edward County, perhaps, Richard. We'll pull up our sheets there, and we are just getting confirmed. We are still waiting for Prince Edward County.
Oh.
There is not much being reported in Prince Edward County. I think a lot of it has to do with that 8:30 deadline now on the polls.
Yes, and the paper ballots could have an impact on it, but
Yep.
yeah. Well, we'll certainly you know, wait with bated breath for Prince Edward County, because it's always a very interesting place. You know, I mean, how many places have 9 wards and, you know, such a large number of councillors? So, and of course there you get the combination of the older residents and the newer residents. And it's always a fascinating place.
Yeah, and agriculture being front and center with the wine industry and all the big money rolling in from the federal government with that respect too. So yeah, lots of eyes on Prince Edward County. It's not just folks living in there, right?
Well, for those of us who have, again, been around for quite a few years, and to watch the evolution of Prince Edward County, both when wine came in and then you read about it in the New York Times, and you know, you pick up a magazine, national magazines, and people, you know, talking about Prince Edward County. It's really quite amazing to watch this evolution. And again, politically, the difficulty of managing it. This is where, you know, with Steve Ferguson and others, managing the adjustments, managing the change. It's something to watch. And of course, for the people living there, including myself, it's very important to your daily life.
Well, speaking of managing, we're going to do the acclaims right now. So these positions are acclaimed. Once again, the mayor of Deseronto acclaimed is Dan Johnston. That came in rather quickly, Richard. I believe that was right before we came on air.
Yes. Well, being acclaimed, it's much easier to deal with it. But yes, yeah, Deseronto, and then the deputy mayor also acclaimed in Deseronto. So I guess the voters there must be happy with them. At least no one chose to run against them, which would indicate that they were in a strong position. So indeed, Deseronto will have continuation.
And the deputy reeve of Tananago is also acclaimed. Heather Lang gets that seat.
Yes. Yes. Well, of course, in Tananaga, the Rick Phillips, the reeve, and of course, warden of Hastings County, is retiring at the end of the term. And he served so well. I mean, he was highly regarded across Eastern Ontario in the Wardens Conference and others. So yes, he served long, and I was talking to him just 2 days ago, and he's ready now to pass it on to other people to take care of the township.
Yeah, and I think it might just be strange for many, because Rick Phillips has been, quite frankly, all over the place. He's not just beating the drum about being the reeve of his certain area. He makes sure in different committees or different speeches, especially at Loyalist College, that, you know, he represents the broader Bay of Quinte region. He's got fabulous relationships with a number of people in a number of committees. So I think certainly we thank Warden Rick Phillips for his time. Regardless of your political opinion of him, he certainly did a fabulous job representing the Bay of Quinte on a broader region and reminding us of the history and the historical topics and topics that he's seen throughout his political career, not only in his area but other ways.
Yeah. He's a very strong person. As this happened, I've known him, worked with him on committees and other things for many years. In fact, just last Saturday he came to an event we were holding. But he's a very strong person. When he wants to achieve something, he's very difficult to get off his off his argument there. He's very determined, and that's reflected. I think Tyndall is doing very well, and will continue to do so under the new Reeve.
Like Daryl Cramp as well, right? Another person who retired who has strong leadership too. So
yes.
Lots of pillars in our community are retiring, so there is time for change. There's going to be a changing of the guard, so to speak.
Well, it's at least an evolution of the guard.
Yes.
Unlike Great Britain these days. But I know it's true. The councils are evolving, and even at the mayor and Reeve levels, changes, and that's good. You must have change. You must have fresh ideas, and to keep moving forward. So it's very encouraging. The overall, as you look across Quinte, is very encouraging.
Well, we'll see what changes we can present to our listeners and our viewers out there. Thanks so much for joining us. And all our fabulous crew in the back here behind the scenes doing all the numbers and posting everything. It's a lot of things to keep track of. We will post up Ward 1 in Belleville again, Richard. We'll take a look at where
indeed.
things are at there.
Yes, as I say, 6 councillors being elected from the 11 candidates. Tyler Alsop, who again joined Belleville Council in the not quite midterm, but he was 7th in line, I guess, at the election night. So he moved in there and led the polls. That'll be very encouraging, very encouraging. Garnet Thompson, again, a long time serving, a very devoted municipal leader, second. And then Chris Millette, who has really made an impression in his first term. People didn't know Chris when he moved in beyond his professional life, and now, as I say, he's done very well. And Sean Kelly equally, they've made a big impression. And then, as I say, 2 new names, Lisa Ann Chatton, who is well known around the city, of course, and Barbara Enright Miller, a good solid business person there. So you have again. What looks like a very strong, lots of experience, lots of youth, lots of newness, a wonderful mix.
Exactly, and the people that so far haven't gotten in, once again, this is unofficial. Margaret Sue, there was a lot of signs we saw for her across the region, a local business person, president of Eastern Ontario Korean Canadian Association in that Empire Theatre debate, hosted by the Belleville Chamber of Commerce. She was a real advocate for electric cars, charging stations, making sure that we have qualified employees and employers, and we're being mindful of diversity and inclusion really moving forward. Kelly McCaw, a longtime councillor, in her speech at the Empire Theatre, her big thing was policing. We need more officers as our population is growing. She noted to the rise that Belleville police officers are seeing with the call volume. Carol Feeney, a former member of the Quinte Arts Council, former executive director of the Quinte Arts Council. She relies on public transit herself, and she was quite vocal with the fact that transit needs to keep evolving and keep moving and keeping up with the electric time, so to speak. So that's another note there. And Nick Boretsky, he was a newcomer as well. Nick Boretsky, very similar to Tyler Alsop, had said in his speech at the Empire Theatre that he was asked, where's the greatest opportunity for the city to grow? And he said the waterfront. If you build up the waterfront, you help downtown, you get more money to address homelessness and green space, and it would spin off from that. So the waterfront, he felt, was a big thing with keeping young people as well. Another names with a lot of experience, Sarita Van Dyke, over 20 years as a registered nurse, focused on palliative care. She now works towards a health management retention situation there. And she had said in her speech, the problem is not homelessness, but the lack of sufficient supports to solve the root of the problem. So there's somebody 20 years in the healthcare field who ran for the first time. She is also a newcomer, I believe, to Belleville, moved with her family a little while ago. Mike Benson, a truck driver who said he really wanted to be the voice of the people, listen to everybody regardless of your background. Jeremy T. Davis, who's ran before, wanting to make sure that everything's accessible, and once again, like Mike, listening to all voices of the population, and Robert Labarge as well, who wanted to make sure that he would listen to everybody. So lots of good choices.
Yes, well, it's important. It's important that you have a good number of candidates running to give the choices. Let's take a look at Ward 2. And again, an interesting situation here. Paul Carr, who has been very popular and very active during the last term, and not surprising, he's led the poll in Ward 2. And Catherine Ann Brown, again, a very popular businesswoman in town, has defeated the incumbent Bill Sanderson by, well, 50 odd votes there, not very much, but she does stand ahead of him at this point, and Michael Clark bringing up the fourth position there. But again, another new person on council, Catherine Ann Brown, again will be bringing in the fresh new views, which we really strongly support.
And speaking to bringing those fresh views, I think, the Empire Theatre, when the Belleville Chamber of Commerce hosted that debate, it was pretty well full house. And for many people just learning about these candidates for the first time, depending on how they could find their information on the people that they wanted to vote. Over in Ward 2, the next day, they had their kind of town hall debate in the Thurlow Community Centre, and Catherine Brown was very well spoken, very detailed on issues. They were all very well spoken, but I think Paul Carr, Bill Sanderson, Michael Clark, and Catherine Brown for sure had some really valuable discussions and comments on kind of where the city of Belleville could go in a Ward 2 lens as Thurlow continues to build and expand. And the question goes to whether Belleville Transit keeps going out there, right? So a lot of dynamic discussions in Ward 2.
Well, that's certainly, Ward 2 is a growth area, isn't it? It's growing in all directions. And so a lot of things have to be done to bring it into the city, if you will.
Well, let's go to the city for a little bit. We're going to go to some results from Tyndonega and Crammy, I believe, as we see what the situation is out there. There we go. Crammy Mayor acclaimed. Mandy Martin, back in.
That's...
Crammy Deputy Mayor is Sandra Arthur, so we have two women in the role now leading Crammy.
Two women operating Crammy Township, very historical township, a very interesting place. And the councillors, Sherry Adams led the poll, and Edward Van Egmond and Joel Schreiber following up closely. And 2 votes below in 4th place, Timothy Gilligan. Again, we don't know if these are the absolute final numbers, but that is only 2 votes separation. That was something going to have to be looked at.
And those are the final numbers, Richard.
They are the final numbers. Then, as I say, a difference of 2 votes, that has to be painful.
Tough break for Timothy tonight, my goodness. And the Reeve of Tyndonega, Claire Kennelly and Adam Hannafin. So Claire, so far, is leading.
Yes, that's Kennelly. I mustn't correct my partner here, but...
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate it. You can correct me anytime.
That's one of the great historical families of Tyndonega, so I'd have to correct that.
I'm going to need my glasses. Thank you, Richard. You can lead the show here.
Oh, no, okay. As I say, the people who are acclaimed, they can sit back and put their feet up on election night, and for councillors... Jean, let me see now. I don't understand this.
They are all acclaimed.
They're all acclaimed, yes. Well, again, no battles in Tyndonega tonight. Jen Phillips, Don McFarlane, and David Ogden all acclaimed in Tyndonega, so they can get down to business there.
Now, you mentioned the Kennelly family being quite historic. Walk me through the background there.
Well, of course, when you get into Tyndonega, from Marysville or Reed area, there's some very old families and that have been there for many years, and of course the Kennellys I know quite well, and the Hannafins too, and other names like that. It's an area where the families have stayed, large families, large agricultural families in many cases, and many of them have stayed there. So you have a very traditional generation after generation of the same family.
Has there been a Kennelly, to your knowledge, that's put their name forward in municipal election or politics?
Well, my colleague Jim Kennelly, who was on my board of directors of the Historical Society, was the chair of the separate school board at one point. But no, I don't know beyond that.
Neat. Well, I'm never going to forget that name now, aren't I, Richard?
That's right.
Let's keep rolling here, or we might take a break. What do you want to do?
Well, I'm fine. As I say, we might look at the Belleville mayors. I say the numbers were...
Yes, let's look at the Belleville mayors again. That's a fabulous idea.
They were at the bottom a while back, but just to take one more look at them.
One more look. If you are just joining us for the first time, we did have Neil Ellis with us earlier, which was fabulous to talk to him.
But
So, unofficial, but looking pretty locked in at this point. Neil Ellis, 9,194. Mitch Panjuk, who was seeking re-election as mayor, 5,654. And local businessman Kyle Thompson, who is running for the first time, 668 votes.
yeah, that's right. And our voting here had been that this would be a very close race with either Neil Ellis or Mitch Panchuk coming very, very close. And it's not the case, which that's going to require some analysis in the coming days.
Interesting to see the chatter on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, especially as tomorrow morning or even later this week, right? But when you're driving around the city of Belleville and looking at the lawn signs, I felt it was rather 50-50 between Mitch and Neil, but the lawn signs never really tell the full story.
And even when you look at the candidates for council who are not successful, the four candidates not successful in a council that seems to have achieved a great deal. It's as I say, there's going to have to be some in-depth analysis here so we can understand. A council has worked hard and done a lot of things. It was really a number of changes.
Well, let's make our pro and con list during the break then. We'll be back shortly on YourTV.
We are YourTV. Connect with us. YourTV, truly local.
Alcoholics Anonymous. We're here to help. For more information, visit aa.org and download the Meeting Guide app.
Join me, Sandy Barnes, for In the Spotlight. We'll be showcasing women in aviation for International Women's Day. In history, we have many female aviators, like Amelia Earhart.
There were a lot of female aviators early on.
How did you get involved in aviation?
When I was 5 or 6 years old, I watched the movie Peter Pan, and I just knew I wanted to fly too.
We are YourTV.
Inside our downtown studio here in Belleville. Thanks so much for joining us as Richard Hughes and I continue to try to keep track of the numbers as fast as they come in. Massive thanks to our YourTV team behind the scenes who are going through each municipal website and updating the numbers literally minute by minute as they get refreshed and updated. We would like to issue a correction and sincere apology to Linda Reed in the Frankfurt ward. Our apologies, we had the numbers flipped. There was a glitch. We showed initially that Linda Reed was not winning. We flipped that basically as we were talking, and she has won that Frankfurt seat unofficial, but she is in the lead. So our apology to Linda Reed and her family for that glitch as we continue to quite literally read the numbers right off the screen as fast as we can. can, and we're typing as fast as we can too.
Yeah. Yes. When numbers are flying in all directions so fast, but yeah, we do regret that. But of course, we corrected it almost immediately, and I'm sure. Linda Reid is quite pleased to see the correct numbers, and congratulations to her.
Yes. As we flip through the Belleville numbers very quickly there, as we're seeing on our screen, Belleville Ward 2 and Belleville Ward 2 Councillor Paul Carr in the lead, followed by Catherine Brown, Bill Sandus in the incumbent, who has so far lost his seat, and Michael Clark, a local businessman too, is a small business owner, I believe.
Yes, so in Ward 2, of course, that very large area north of Ward 1, we'll have one new person and of course and one incumbent. So that's an interesting combination.
Yes, and those numbers don't appear to be changing, Richard. Our team is just saying, so that is unofficially kind of where it's going to hold, I think, for the evening.
Yes. And Quinte West, again, just to review them, Jim Harrison has a solid lead over Karen Sharp. I think at this point in the evening, Jim can sit back and catch his breath. And Claudia Delude, who has run in a number of elections, at a distant third. But so in the mayor's chair in Quinte West, there won't be any change.
As we look at Ward 3 in the city of Quinte West, the Murray Road, LEA in a healthy lead at the top so far, followed by McHugh, who's acclaimed as well. I'll let you take the reins on this one, Richard.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, okay.
You've got
yes,
the magic
Jim,
table.
Yeah, well, I'll have to take the numbers from the screen. But yes, Jim Elliott, of course, incumbent with a pretty solid lead there. And David McHugh, of course, not far behind him. But there's a fair gap down to the next four candidates. So the two incumbents, very solid. Obviously, there was no question that they were going to be defeated. So because of the gap of almost 400 votes, or which is about 25% to the third and then lower on. So yeah, to the Ward 3 Murray, we'll continue with their councillors.
As we go to Ward 4 now, hopefully we'll see a change.
Ward 4 is Frankfurt, which has one seat at the council.
Yes, and Linda Reid.
Yes, we have it correct. We do ultimately get to the right situation, but we do apologize if people were concerned when they saw the first numbers. But yeah, Linda Reid very solidly in the lead and will be the councillor for Frankfurt, a very pleasant village of Frankfurt.
Expanding village of Frankfurt too. They've got some cool kind of infrastructure projects in the works. Prince Edward County, Richard, bit of a toss-up. As we mentioned, the polls didn't close until 8:30 and open an extra half hour to accommodate what we believe was a glitch. Not an official word, but we certainly heard of problems. Prince Edward County really, on their website, only listing about 3% of the polls right now, so it is too hard to tell. Yeah. We're not going to post it right now because it is so small.
Yeah. No, and on 3%, you can't make any assumptions even at this hour. So we'll just have to wait, and in due course, Prince Edward County will come through as they always do, and we'll have the numbers.
Yeah, and I believe we'll see if we can get the mayor's chair though for Prince Edward County. We'll see how the mayor's race is doing. So very similar to Quinte West right now. The incumbent is in the league, Steve Ferguson there, followed by Terry Short, Diane O'Brien, and Kyle Douglas Main.
Well, there's a switch there. Of course, Diane O'Brien was in second place earlier on in the evening. And while there are 70-some votes, that's not a great difference. But Steve Ferguson's it's at 1,500 votes over his next. That's 50% more than his next candidate. So I think we can safely say that Steve Ferguson again will retain his gavel at the head of Prince Edward County Council.
Interesting times for Steve Ferguson and Prince Edward County, as we've alluded at the top of this broadcast too. But many of these seats that appear to be acclaimed, of course unofficial, but appear to be acclaimed. Steve Ferguson had a lot of social media ads this time around on Facebook. I saw a number of social media ads. Jim Harrison as well had a lot of just kind of billboards around. Mitch Panchuk and Neil Ellis, both equally, it seemed, just on my own Facebook feed, had stuff promoting as well. So really trying to hit all demographics and all kind of where people will have their eyeballs.
Well, they're changing times, aren't they? In relatively few years, times have changed, and yes, promotion through social media is becoming more important, more extensive, more pervasive, and of course, with now even the voting now is electronic, and your campaigning is electronic. So I think you don't have to look very hard to see that this is the future.
Well, speaking of looking ahead to the future, ahead of this broadcast, Richard, interesting municipal report coming out from Prince Edward County. This was published by County Live, that great kind of online publication. They're reporting that the municipality in Prince Edward County reported 4,500 ballots had been cast out of more than 23,000 eligible voters. That was as of 5 p.m. on Friday, October 21st. So they already had 4,500 ballots cast out of 23,000 eligible voters. So 43% of voters casted their ballots in the 2018 election. So an interesting note to come out of Prince Edward County as we see how many people actively engaged, because unlike Belleville and Quinte West, Prince Edward County had all the chips on the table. You could vote online, you could go paper ballot, ward specific too.
Well, I think what's going to determine the next election, if you will, is if the total votes cast is equal to the past, or the way it appears now, more people have voted. The greater participation, that would indicate that electronic voting is successful.
Yeah.
Conversely, if the number of votes cast should decrease substantially, and that isn't what we're seeing, that would indicate that you might need the paper ballot. But as we see, again, everything's coming in great speed. It would appear that the participation in the vote is actually up with electronic voting, and that's encouraging.
Now, with Prince Edward County, the county clerk will declare the official election results at 4 p.m. on Wednesday. So something to keep in mind. Wednesday, October 26th is when the county clerk down in Prince Edward County officially declares the election results. So for folks out there wondering, maybe we don't get to all of it with so little reporting right now, Wednesday, October 26th is when the county clerk will officially declare the election results. But we do have a few, I understand, slowly trickling in from Prince Edward County, which is good to see.
Yes, indeed. Let me find my... Where did my county go?
Oh, it's a great shuffle, isn't it, Richard?
Well, when you're looking at so many areas, but certainly in Ward 1 Picton, let me see.
I can help you out here.
You go ahead.
All right. So Phil St. Jean is 835 votes. Kate McNaughton, someone who also published a lot on Twitter and social media, 814. So she's in the second. 2 chairs there for Picton. And we'll go with our next one, possibly. Ward 2, Bloomfield, Hallowell. 2 chairs. Phil Prinzen retains his seat so far, and Brad Nyman as well. And we do have all 9 wards reporting in Prince Edward County currently. So, Richard, we've got some more numbers coming in, which is fabulous.
Good. Yes, Ward 3, Wellington, Corrigan Engelsdorfer with a substantial lead over Jennifer Cobb and Heather Norlock. Yes, and so she would appear to be very safe in that position.
Ward 4 in Ameliasburg.
Ward 4 in Ameliasburg, indeed, my home riding, if you will. Janice Maynard, who, of course, is an incumbent with a substantial lead over the next 2, who will also have seats, Roy Pinnell and Sam Grosso. So that's very interesting. Bill Chuck and Paul Dawson-Board, substantially lower.
Now, Richard, seeing how it's your own word, what was the platform that Janice Maynard ran on? What were kind of her big things?
Well, to tell you the truth, I probably shouldn't say this, but I haven't heard a great deal on the platform. So I really can't comment.
But that's not something that is uncommon for many people, right? Especially locally. Sometimes it was just hard to find the platforms for different councillors. Certainly here in Belleville, I had a hard time keeping track of who was posting their platforms where.
Yes, well, that's true. I mean, most of their platforms are, they keep to the generalities, so you have to look very deeply and study to find the differences. But But basically, they, as I say, Janice Maynard is highly regarded. She's been there for some time and has served her Amelisburg well in that regard.
As we go to Ward 5 in Athol, Richard, do you want to take this one?
Yes. In Athol Ward 5, one councillor to be elected. There are 4 candidates, and Sam Branderhorst seems to have won that by a substantial margin over the other 3 candidates.
As we'll go to Ward 6,
which is Sophiasburg indeed. And there, again, Bill Roberts with a very, very large majority over Paul Drake. So he's certainly well regarded in Sophiasburg.
Ward 7 in Hillier, Chris Brainy, 488, a big jump over Dee Hazel and Paul Vander Harlem. And Ward 8, if we can.
And the 2 Marysburgs, yes?
Yes. They're very sticky on that, aren't they? The 2 Marysburgs.
Absolutely. North Marysburg is not South Marysburg. And a moderately close race there, of course. David Harrison with about 33-vote lead over Ben Thornton. So that, most of the others have been substantial differences.
Tight.
So in South Marysburg, the voters weren't quite sure which way to go, but right now John Hirsch has about a 10% lead.
Well, seems like there was a battle in Marysburg, regardless if you were north or south. Sometimes they have soapbox races to duel out some arguments over there.
Yes.
Great place to soapbox in Marysburg.
Is that right?
Yes,
well,
yes.
Yeah, it's interesting, of course, Prince Edward County with 9 wards, Trenton with 4, Quinte West with 4, and Belleville with 2. And of course, the question of creating more wards in Belleville was, a topic for council last time, and I think would have been a topic again if results had been otherwise.
Yeah, same with Quinte West. I mean, and one of the big things for Claude Delude, who is running to be the mayor of Quinte West again, is, he's a businessman, owns a bakery in Trenton, and his big thing talking to me on 91X was the ward system. He feels that the ward system does not reflect equal representation. He was noting to the fact that he wants people representing each sector fairly, right? And he wants a total revamp of the ward system.
Well, there are many ways to look at the ward system. Some would say we shouldn't have wards. Each councillor should represent the entire community. Our communities are not that large. We're not a Toronto or an Ottawa. But there are others who, certainly in Prince Edward County, where you have these distinctive communities, Wellington, Bloomfield, the Amelisburg area, the north, etc. And they're very proud communities, and they have their own views, and they want to have a person on council who they can go to and say, this is what we want. So, the different views, but democracy works no matter either way, I guess.
Yeah, and I remember when the word question again was brought up with the City Belleville Council meeting. I believe this was last summer. There was a discussion with, whether you're living in Ward 1 or Ward 2 in Belleville, some people just want to email a certain councillor because they have a pre-existing relationship with them. Garnet Thompson brought up several times that, hey, he's been around for so long at the Belleville City Chamber that regardless if you're a Ward 2 resident or a Ward 1 resident, some people just call Garnet because they say he's Mr. Belleville, and he generally knows what's happening all the time in Belleville. He's very detailed. Same with Kelly McCaw. She had the same thing she mentioned, like, I get emails from everybody. And then there was discussion of some residents truly not knowing who to turn to, so they would mass email every councillor in the city of Belleville. So then you would have, let's say, a Chris Millette working on the same issue as a Kelly McCaw or a Garnet Thompson, and they might not necessarily know right away that they're all asking the same questions to the same people, right? Then it comes a matter of what's effective and what works well, and how do you get the problem solved without the same people spinning and doing the same thing, right? So there's a question about representation, but also where people feel comfortable the most with.
Yes. At one point, I think Ward 2 was seen as a rural ward, but that's changing rapidly with all the housing development, and a lot of that area is now becoming very urban. So Ward 2 is a very, very interesting that way between rural and urban in the same.
Yeah.
But it's no longer a line of, Belleville Ward urban, Thurlow Ward rural.
Well, I'm glad you're with me, Richard Hughes, and sharing all this knowledge, because we didn't know if we would have a long show or a short show. We're going to go once around the number pool again, and then we will reassess and see where we're at with the situation. If you are joining us, thank you so much for sticking with us as we get all the numbers as fast as they come in. Once again, this is unofficial, but this is what we have based on municipal websites.
Well, actually, as we go through these, I think there's a lot of surprises and a lot of interesting situations. So, over the next few days, there's going to be a lot of people talking, and that's a good thing. So of course, at Belleville, the mayor's chair, Neil Ellis, will assume the mayor's chair with a substantial majority over Mitch Panchuk, and then we move to Council at Ward 1. Would you like to talk about Ward 1?
Yes, I can talk about Ward 1 if we get that first graphic up. We've seen the whole lead the whole way, though. Tyler Alsop leading the way with the most votes for sure. Garnet Thompson, a well-known figure, along with Chris Millette and Sean Kelly, a radio broadcaster. Lisa Ann Chatton, who served as a very popular school trustee in Hastings Prince Edward District School Board. She now switches to the council chair, it appears. And Barbara Enright Miller, who did a really good job in explaining her platform and her views as a longtime resident in Belleville, especially that Empire Theatre chat. All right, we will go to Ward 2, Richard. I'll let you take that.
We'll go to Ward 2. Yes, very much. And in Ward 2, of course, we had 4 candidates for the two seats at council, and Paul Kyer, a substantial lead over all the rest. Again, Paul Kyer has been a very popular and very active councillor. He's very much in the news all the time. And Catherine Ann Brown in second place, a new councillor, certainly not a new face in the area. So that should make for a very interesting representation from Ward 2.
As we go over to Quinte West, in the mayor's chair, it appears once again, is Jim Harrison with a quite healthy lead over former councillor, now Karen Sharp, who has been a councillor up until this point, decided to put her name in the big chair. For Ward 1 in Trenton, councillor Zach Carr, a brand new face, Zach Carr rather, lots of youth now coming to the city of Quinte West. Mike Kosovos, who was acclaimed, David O'Neill acclaimed, Sally Freeman acclaimed as well. So not a whole lot of changes there. Ward 2, we will go next. Just noticing, Duncan Armstrong, a former Quinte West councillor, had a real jump for that 4th seat.
Yes, yes, he ran for mayor in the last election.
He did, yeah. Ward 2, Sydney Edgerton Boyce, as we mentioned, a former Belleville City councillor. Shelley Stedell, Terry Cassidy, and Don Coetzee, so not a whole lot of changes there.
Well, no, just the addition of Edgerton Boyce to that. And leading the poll in his first campaign in Quinte West. That's interesting.
And for Ward 3, Jim Ellier, David McHugh, 2 acclaims there in the Murray Ward. Both men very big on health care. Ward 4, we will go now. Frankfurt Ward, Linda Reed.
Yeah, 1 seat in Frankfurt.
And we'll go to Prince Edward County now. Here we go. Steve Ferguson still in the lead for the mayor's chair again, the incumbent there, followed by Terry Short, a businessman, and Dan O'Brien, who ran previously as a councillor. And we'll go to the wards quickly in Prince Edward County. Richard, I'll let you take this one away.
Yes, West, we're Ward 1, the town of Picton, a very lovely place in both summer and winter, I might add. Phil St. Jean and Kate McNaughton, again, both with quite a solid lead over the other 3 candidates. And just moving a little bit to the west, Bloomfield Hallowell. Again, Bloomfield, a wonderful place to visit. And Phil Prinzen and Brad Nyman, of course, very well known in that area, with not that much of a lead over the 3rd candidate. And you'll take us to Wellington.
Ward 3 in Wellington, my home away from home. Love the hockey community in Wellington. It is Corey Engersdorfer in the healthy lead for Wellington. He has been there all night. I'll hear more about that at the hockey game next week. Ward 4 in Ameliasburg, your neck of the woods, Janice Maynard, Roy Pennell, Sam Grosso, and Bill Ketch. Or 3 rather, Grosso.
3. Mm-hmm.
Should borrow your glasses, Richard. You go for the next one.
Oh, yes. In Athol Township, the very old traditional Athol Township, Sam Branderhorst won that again by a substantial margin over his other 3 contestants.
And Ward 6, if we can. Is there anything for Ward 6? Here we go. Sophiasburg. Bill Roberts has a very healthy lead. Pretty well. Rest assured there.
Yes, he was never in doubt
No.
in Sophiasburg. And beautiful downtown Hillier, Chris Brenny, again, we substantial lead over his other two candidates there.
We're just going to quickly wrap up the show, Richard. Ward 8, North Marysburg, David Harrison. As we mentioned, it was a bit of a tight race in Marysburg.
That was a tight one.
North versus South. That was the tightest race we have seen all night. We'll go to Ward 9, South Marysburg. They take their North and their South very seriously.
North and South shall never meet.
They need toques, I think. And John Hirsch. That was another really tight one, too.
Yeah.
If we can briefly go to Sterling or Brighton, perhaps we can get an update there. I am seeing just crammy on our left-hand side, Richard.
Yeah.
And Sterling Rodden, Bob Mullins keeps the seat.
Yeah.
And we'll go to Brighton if we can. We see crammy on the side. Ward 1 in Sterling Rodden, rather. Councillors Jeremy Sohm and Dean Graff. And the next one, we'll see what appears. Ward 2 in Sterling, Carolyn Smith and Don Stewart. That was another tighter one.
Yes.
Shifted a little bit.
Yeah. And John Rock was the incumbent, and he came 3rd, so...
Tight race in Brighton, maybe tighter than many expected. Brian Ostrander, as of this moment, keeps his seat as mayor of Brighton, unofficial, against Doug LeBlanc. So that was a much tighter race than we had even here in Belleville.
And the deputy mayor's race is even tighter. Ron Anderson in the lead by less than 100 votes over Mark Bateman. So we'll have to see about what the final numbers are.
Yeah, the final numbers could be a while, but the Brighton councillors, Emily S. Raleigh and Butwell, Bobby Wright, Jeff Wheeldon, Byron Ferratis are that. And I believe, Richard, we've made it through around the Bay of Quinte region quite fast and effectively as we wrap up this horse race, so to speak.
It's been a very, very interesting, quite often municipal elections aren't that exciting as the federal or the provincial, but this has really been quite a night. So there's major changes in some areas, certainly in Belleville, and of course in other areas a lot of acclamations, and people were apparently content with their candidates.
Brighton and North and South Marysburg certainly had the tighter races of the night, but Richard, that is it for us right now. We're going to have to pull the track, so to speak, and we'll reset and we'll see what happens next in the coming days. Richard Hughes, fabulous to be with you tonight, and thanks you so much for joining us. On behalf of your YourTV team, I'm Lindsay Heron, wishing you a good evening on a special election night here on Cogeco.